The more hopeful and simple-minded thought that a message would soon come from the court to summon Master Aegidius to the king, to be knighted at the least. In a week the message came, but it was of a different sort. It was written and signed in triplicate. One copy for Giles, one for the parson, and one to be nailed onto the church door. Only the copy addressed to the parson was of any use, for the court hand was peculiar and as dark to the folk of Ham as the book Latin. But the parson rendered it into the vulgar tongue and read it from the pulpit. It was short and to the point, for a royal letter. The king was in a hurry. We, Augustus, B, A, P, and M, Rex, etc., make known that we have determined, for the safety of our realm and for the keeping of our honour, that the worm or dragon styling himself Chrysophylax, the rich, shall be sought out and condignly punished for his misdemeanours, torts, felonies, and foul perjury. All the knights of our royal household are hereby commanded to arm and make ready to ride upon this quest, so soon as Master Aegidius A.J. Agricola shall arrive at this our court. Inasmuch as the said Aegidius has proved himself a trusty man, and well able to deal with giants, dragons, and other enemies of the king's peace, now therefore we command him to ride forth at once, and to join the company of our knights with all speed. People said this was a high honour, and next door to being dubbed. The miller was envious. Friend Aegidius is rising in the world, said he. I hope he will know us when he gets back. Maybe he never will, said the blacksmith. That's enough from you, old horse-face, said the farmer, mighty put out. Honour be blowed. If I get back, even the miller's company will be welcome. Still, it is some comfort to think that I shall be missing you both for a bit. And with that he left them. You cannot offer excuses to the king as you can to your neighbours. So lambs or no lambs, ploughing or none, milk or water, he had to get up on his grey mare and go. The parson saw him off. I hope you are taking some stout rope with you, he said. What for? Said Giles. To hang myself. Nay, take heart, Master Aegidius, said the parson. It seems to me that you have a luck that you can trust. But take also a long rope, for you may need it, unless my foresight deceives me. And now farewell, and return safely. Aye, and come back and find all my house and land in a pickle. Blast dragons, said Giles. Then, stuffing a great coil of rope in a bag by his saddle, he climbed up and rode off. He did not take the dog, who had kept well out of sight all the morning, but when he was gone, Garm slunk home and stayed there, and howled all the night, and was beaten for it, and went on howling. Help! Oh, help! He cried. I'll never see dear master again, and he was so terrible and splendid. I wish I had gone with him, I do. Shut up, said the farmer's wife, or you'll never live to see if he comes back or he don't. The blacksmith heard the howls. A bad omen, he said cheerfully. Many days passed and no news came. No news is bad news, he said, and burst into song. When Farmer Giles got to court, he was tired and dusty. But the knights, in polished mail and with shining helmets on their heads, were all standing by their horses. The king's summons and the inclusion of the farmer had annoyed them, and so they insisted on obeying orders literally, setting off the moment that Giles arrived. The poor farmer had barely time to swallow a sop in a draught of wine before he was off on the road again. The mare was offended. What she thought of the king was luckily unexpressed, as it was highly disloyal. It was already late in the day. Too late in the day to go start a dragon hunt, thought Giles. But they did not go far. The knights were in no hurry once they had started. They rode along at their leisure in a straggling line. Knights, esquires, servants and ponies trussed with the baggage, and Farmer Giles jogging behind on the tired mare. When evening came, they halted and pitched their tents. No provision had been made for Farmer Giles, and he had to borrow what he could. The mare was indignant, and she forswore her allegiance to the house of Augustus Bonifacius. The next day they rode on, and all the day after. On the third day they descried in the distance the dim and inhospitable mountains. Before long they were in regions where the lordship of Augustus Bonifacius was not universally acknowledged. They rode then with more care and kept closer together. On the fourth day they reached the wild hills and the borders of the dubious lands where legendary creatures were reputed to dwell. Suddenly one of those riding ahead came upon ominous footprints in the sand by a stream. They called for the farmer. "What are these, Master Egidius?" they said. "Dragon marks," said he. "Lead on," said they. So now they rode west with Farmer Giles at their head, and all the rings were jingling on his leather coat. That mattered little, for all the knights were laughing and talking, and a minstrel rode with them singing a lay. Every now and again they took up the refrain of the song, and sang it all together very loud and strong. It was encouraging, for the song was good. It had been made long before in days when battles were more common than tournaments, but it was unwise. Their coming was now known to all the creatures of that land, and the dragons were cocking their ears in all the caves of the west. There was no longer any chance of their catching old Chrysophylax napping. As luck, or the grey mare herself, would have it, when at last they drew under the very shadow of the dark mountains, Farmer Giles' mare went lame. They had now begun to ride along steep and stony paths, climbing upwards with toil and ever-growing disquiet. Bit by bit she dropped back in line, stumbling and limping and looking so patient and sad that at last Farmer Giles was obliged to get off and walk. Soon they found themselves right at the back amongst the pack ponies, but no one took any notice of them. The knights were discussing points of precedence and etiquette, and their attention was distracted. Otherwise they would have observed the dragon marks were now obvious and numerous. They had come, indeed, to the places where Chrysophylax often roamed, or alighted after taking his daily exercise in the air. The lower hills and the slopes on either side of the path had a scorched and trampled look. There was little grass, and the twisted stumps of heather and gorse stood up black amid the wide patches of ash and burned earth. The region had been a dragon's playground for many a year. A dark mountain wall loomed up before them. Farmer Giles was concerned about his mare, but he was glad of the excuse for no longer being so conspicuous. It had not pleased him to be riding at the head of such a cavalcade in these dreary and dubious places. A little later he was gladder still, and had reason to thank his fortune and his mare. For just about midday, it being the Feast of Candlemas, and the 7th day of their riding, Tailbiter leapt out of its sheath, and the dragon out of his cave. Without warning or formality, he swooped out to give battle. Down he came upon them with a rush and a roar. Far from his home he had not shown himself overbold, in spite of his ancient and imperial lineage, but now he was filled with a great wrath, for he was fighting at his own gate, as it were, and with all his treasure to defend. He came round a shoulder of the mountain like a ton of thunderbolts, with a noise like a gale, and a gust of red lightning. The argument concerning precedence stopped short. All the horses shied to one side or the other, and some of the knights fell off. The ponies and the baggage and the servants turned and ran at once. They had no doubt as to the order of precedence. Suddenly there came a rush of smoke that smothered them all, and right in the midst of it the dragon crashed into the head of the line. Several of the knights were killed before they could even issue their formal challenge to battle, and several others were bowled over, horses and all. As for the remainder, their steeds took charge of them, and turned round and fled, carrying their masters off, whether they wished it or no. Most of them wished it indeed. But the old grey mare did not budge. Maybe she was afraid of breaking her legs on the steep stony path. Maybe she felt too tired to run away. She knew in her bones that dragons on the wing are worse behind you than before you, and you need more speed than a racehorse for flight to be useful. Besides, she had seen this Chrysophylax before, and remembered chasing him over the field and brook in her own country till he lay down tame in the village street. Anyway, she stuck her legs out wide, and she snorted. Farmer Giles went as pale as his face could manage, but he stayed by her side, for there seemed nothing else to do. And so it was that the dragon, charging down the line, suddenly saw straight in front of him his old enemy with Tailbiter in his hand. It was the last thing he expected. He swerved aside like a great bat and collapsed on the hillside close to the road. Up came the grey mare, quite forgetting to walk lame. Farmer Giles, much encouraged, had scrambled hastily on her back. "Excuse me," said he, "but were you looking for me by any chance?"
"No, indeed," said Chrysophylax. "Who would have thought of seeing you here? I was just flying about."
"Then we meet by good luck," said Giles.
and the pleasure is mine, for I was looking for you. What's more, I have a bone to pick with you, several bones in a manner of speaking." The dragon snorted. Farmer Giles put up his arm to ward off the hot gust, and with a flash, Tailbiter swept forward, dangerously near the dragon's nose. "Hey!" said he, and stopped snorting. He began to tremble and backed away, and all the fire in him was chilled. "You have not, I hope, come to kill me, good master," he whined. "Nay, nay," said the farmer. "I said naught about killing." The grey mare sniffed. "Then what, may I ask, are you doing with all these knights?" said Chrysophylax. "Knights always kill dragons, if we don't kill them first." "I'm doing nothing with them at all. They're naught to me," said Giles. "And anyway, they are all dead now or gone. What about what you said last Epiphany?" "What about it?" said the dragon anxiously. "You're nigh on a month late," said Giles, "and payment is overdue. I've come to collect it. You should beg my pardon for all the bother I have been put to." "I do indeed," said he. "I wish you had not troubled to come." "It'll be every bit of your treasure this time, and no market tricks," said Giles, "or dead you'll be, and I shall hang your skin from our church steeple as a warning." "It's cruel hard," said the dragon. "A bargain's a bargain," said Giles. "Can't I keep just a ring or two, and a mite of gold, in consideration of cash payment?" said he. "Not a brass button," said Giles. And so they kept on for a while, chaffering and arguing like folk at a fair. Yet the end of it was as you might expect, for whatever else might be said, few had ever outlasted Farmer Giles at a bargaining. The dragon had to walk all the way back to his cave, for Giles stuck to his side, with Tailbiter held mighty close. There was a narrow path that wound up and round the mountain, and there was barely room for the two of them. The mare came just behind, and she looked rather thoughtful. It was 5 miles, if it was a step, and stiff going, and Giles trudged along, puffing and blowing, but never taking his eye off the worm. At last, on the west side of the mountain, they came to the mouth of the cave. It was large and black and forbidding, and its brazen doors swung on great pillars of iron. Plainly, it had been a place of strength and pride in days long forgotten, for dragons do not build such works, nor delve such mines, but dwell rather, when they may, in the tombs and treasuries of mighty men and giants of old. The doors of this deep house were set wide, and in their shadow they halted. So far Chrysophylax had had no chance to escape, but coming now to his own gate, he sprang forward and prepared to plunge in. Farmer Giles hit him with the flat of the sword. "Whoa," said he. "Before you go in, I've something to say to you. If you ain't outside again in quick time with something worth bringing, I shall come in after you and cut off your tail to begin with." The mare sniffed. She could not imagine Farmer Giles going down alone into a dragon's den for any money on earth. But Chrysophylax was quite prepared to believe it, with Tailbiter looking so bright and sharp and all. And maybe he was right, and the mare, for all her wisdom, had not yet understood the change in her master. Farmer Giles was backing his luck, and after 2 encounters was beginning to fancy that no dragon could stand up to him. Anyway, out came Chrysophylax again in mighty quick time, with 20 pounds of gold and silver, and a chest of rings and necklaces, and other pretty stuff. "There," said he. "Where?" said Giles. "That's not half enough, if that's what you mean. Nor half of what you've got, I'll be bound." "Of course not," said the dragon, rather perturbed to find that the farmer's wits seemed to have become brighter since that day in the village. "Of course not, but I can't bring it all out at once." "Nor at twice, I'll wager," said Giles. "In you go again, and out again double quick, or I'll give you a taste of Tailbiter." "No," said the dragon, and in he popped, and out again double quick. "There," said he, putting down an enormous load of gold and 2 chests of diamonds. "Now try again," said the farmer, "and try harder." "It's hard, cruel hard," said the dragon as he went back in again. But by this time the grey mare was getting a bit anxious on her own account.
Who's going to carry all this heavy stuff home, I wonder, thought she, and she gave such a long, sad look at all the bags and boxes that the farmer guessed her mind.
Never you worry, lass, said he. We'll make the old worm do the carting.
Mercy on us, said the dragon, who overheard these words as he came out of the cave for the third time with the biggest load of all and a mort of rich jewels like green and red fire. Mercy on us! If I carry all this, it will be near the death of me, and a bag more I never could manage, not if you killed me for it.
Then there is more still, is there? Said the farmer.
Yes, said the dragon, enough to keep me respectable. He spoke near the truth for a rare wonder, and wisely as it turned out. If you'll leave me what remains, said he, very wily, I'll be your friend forever, and I will carry all this treasure back to your honour's own house, and not to the king's. And I will help you to keep it, what is more, said he. Then the farmer took out a toothpick with his left hand, and he thought very hard for a minute. Then, "Done with you," he said, showing a laudable discretion. A knight would have stood out for the whole horde, and got a curse laid upon it, and as likely as not, if Giles had driven the worm to despair, he would have turned and fought in the end, tail-biter or no tail-biter, in which case Giles, if not slain himself, would have been obliged to slaughter his transport and leave the best part of his gains in the mountains. Well, that was the end of it. The farmer stuffed his pockets with jewels, just in case anything went wrong, and he gave the grey mare a small load to carry. All the rest he bound on the back of Chrysophylax in boxes and bags, till he looked like a royal pantechnicon. There was no chance of his flying, for his load was too great, and Giles had tied down his wings.
Mighty handy this rope has turned out in the end, he thought, and he remembered the parson with gratitude. So off now the dragon trotted, puffing and blowing, with the mare at his tail, and the farmer holding out Cordy Mordax very bright and threatening. He dared try no tricks.